本日は、この未来の医師への贈り物ビデオシリーズのスペシャルゲスト、スペシャルプレゼンテーションをしたいと思います。実は私の25年にわたる同僚のドクター・アンデュー・オイシ、大石先生なんですけども、私のプラクティス、外科医としてのプラクティス、そして、教育を一緒にずっとやってきたんですけども、実は彼が、数ヶ月前に、ハワイ大学の医学部外科の修了式、修了するレジデントたちのために、行ったプレゼンテーションが、非常にこう内容的に素晴らしいもんで、ぜひそれをですね、このシリーズでも話してほしいって言ったら、快く引き受けてくださいまして、で、これから彼にそれをしてもらいます。内容的には楽しみにしてください。きっと若い日本のね、人たちにも非常にためになるアドバイスがたくさん出てくると思いますので、本日はよろしくお願いしたいと思います。Okay, from now on, we're gonna speak in English, okay? Andy, it is my great pleasure to have you on this video series. And thank you very much for accepting your presentation, which would be very helpful for the young Japanese generation, even a teenager or a medical student, young physicians in Japan. First, I like to show the first slide. Then after that, I give you so that you can introduce yourself and start your presentation. Present to doctor to be in future. It's a 94th video series by Dr. Andy Oishi. He's a surgeon at the Department of Surgery of University of Hawaii. The title would be Lessons Learned in and Out of the OR. OR meaning operating room. And his experience in volunteer activity in Iraq is based on his presentation. And I'm looking forward to hear your presentation again. Thank you, Dr. Oishi. Now you can do your self-introduction and the presentation.
Thank you, Junji, for inviting me to speak to your audience. Now, I am a Japanese American who unfortunately does not speak the Japanese language, except for when I order my favorite Japanese foods.
Okay.
So I want to offer my sincere apologies that this presentation will be in English. As Dr. Machi said, I'm a general surgeon. Now, most people think that means we operate on everything, but a general surgeon is actually a very specialized surgeon. We are surgeons that operate on problems in the abdomen and other internal organs. We also take care of injuries from trauma like car accidents and gunshot and knife wounds. Now, I graduated from the University of Hawaii Medical School in 1990. And then I completed my residency training to be a general surgeon at the Mayo Clinic in the state of Minnesota.
One of the most famous center, I believe.
That's right. It's called the world famous medical clinic. I returned to Hawaii to practice surgery at the Kuakini Medical Center, where I'm an attending surgeon and also assistant professor of surgery at the University of Hawaii. This is where I met and became partners with Dr. Machi.
Thank you.
And as I said, we have been partners in our surgical practice for over 27 years. And as surgeons and faculty of the University of Hawaii Department of Surgery, I want to say that I am so thankful to be working with Dr. Machi because he has taught me so much about so many aspects of surgery, and he's also been an incredible support for my work internationally. For those of you watching this video, you are very fortunate to have Dr. Machi as a mentor and sensei.
Thank you very much.
So, in addition to my practice here in the University of Hawaii, I've also gone on international surgical missions across the world. And for this presentation, Junji has asked me to tell you about my experience as a general surgeon on international disaster relief medical missions. But if I just described to you what I did on these international relief missions, I think the story would be incomplete and not as useful. So in addition to telling you what I did, I'm going to tell you some of the life lessons that I learned. Now, some of these lessons might apply more to an American culture than a Japanese culture, but I think these lessons I learned can still be helpful to you. And I think these lessons can be helpful even if you never become a physician or go on an international mission.
I believe so.
I started going on international short-term missions almost 20 years ago, performing surgery in the Philippines, in Myanmar, which was previously called Burma, in Africa and Cambodia, and even on a US Navy ship in the Philippines. At that time, I was in a small surgical group with Junji trying to build my practice on hospital call constantly, which meant that you had to be available whenever the hospital called you to see a patient, no matter what time or if it was a weekend or holiday. And the hospital, as Junji knows, called a lot. And I was married and I had 2 kids. So going on missions meant no practice income and leaving my family at home for 2 to 3 weeks at a time and then returning exhausted from a physically demanding trip. So I realized it was never a convenient time to go, and that taught me one of the first lessons that I learned. If something is truly important to you, you must find a way to do it. It's always going to be a sacrifice of time and money and valuable things. But if you don't do that, you might end up being one of those people who says, I will do it when, or I will do it if, or I will do it that, and then you might never do it and look back at your life with regret. Of course, I also learned a lot of practical skills on those early missions about surgery and patient care in resource-poor environments, about integrating what we believe are best practices into other medical systems and cultures. And most importantly, I learned how much people of other cultures could teach me if I was willing to just pay attention, listen, and learn.
Yeah, I agree. If we go to internationally, you learn a lot, from these areas, which we cannot learn in the United States.
That's right. And those short-term early medical missions taught me a second important lesson, that to welcome whatever opportunities come your way and learn whatever you can, even if at that moment you can't see where it will lead you. Because those experiences paved the way for what I'm doing now. I never thought I would end up working for an international relief organization in war zones in Iraq and Ukraine and earthquake zones in Haiti and Turkey. So how did that happen? Well, in 2017, I met a doctor named Dr. Kent Brantley. He was in Hawaii speaking at a conference. Dr. Brantley is a physician who volunteered to work in Liberia, Africa during the Ebola pandemic. Now, those of you watching might not remember Ebola, but Ebola was COVID before COVID, except that Ebola is way more contagious and way more lethal. The only reason Ebola didn't spread around the world was because there was already a rapid test for it. And also, an infected person wasn't contagious unless they already had symptoms, so you could effectively quarantine people. But if you got infected with Ebola, you had up to a 90% chance of dying, more than COVID. And Dr. Brantley was part of the organization that chose to care for patients infected with Ebola, and he actually got infected with Ebola himself and almost died. So I Googled Dr. Brantley and the organization he worked for, and I saw this video.
And I want to say something to all of the doctors and nurses that may want to be involved in what we're doing here in Iraq. And this is where I am right now in Erbil. Just about 30 miles from here, we have a trauma hospital outside of Mosul. And this is where the battle is going on for that city, where the Iraqi army is trying to take it back from ISIS. Every few hours we will get ambulances full of people. They have been shot, they have been blown up, they have shrapnel, women, children. Some of these would be combatants that are coming in. Samaritan's Purse is there. We need trauma doctors and nurses. That's what we need. We need men and women who are willing to come and work and serve. So we would love to have your help. If you can come, please do. Just go to our website and see how you can be involved. God bless you. Thank you.
Now, I remember the president of the organization saying, when there is a fire, a lot of people run away from it. But we want to be people that run to the fire to help those in need. That's why the organization is named Samaritan's Purse, from the story in the Bible about the Good Samaritan, a man who provided extravagant care for somebody else at great cost to himself. I was so inspired, I applied to the Samaritan's Purse Disaster Assistance Response Team, or SP-DART for short, and I was accepted. I think because of my previous mission experience.
Mm.
And then came the tricky part. I had to ask the people I work with if I could leave for a month.
And also your family, right?
Yes. But I had to ask you, Junji, I had to ask my surgery partners, including you, if I could be gone for a whole month and if you could take care of all my work responsibilities while I was gone. And you guys were already working very hard. And I asked you, not only could you do your work, but to do my extra work and not get paid any extra just so I could go. And amazingly, you all said yes. So I am continually amazed and thankful to all of you, especially Machi Sensei, that they let me go on these missions. So here is the third lesson that I learned. Find a place to work where you have really, really good people to work with. Almost everything else in your career will be secondary. Finding really good people to work with, and in return, doing whatever you can to be a good co-worker yourself, has been one of the most important lessons I learned in my career.
I found the good people too, including particularly you.
Thank you, Junji. Well, so let me give you some background about the first SP-DART mission because it will help you understand what SP does and why I keep working with them. As you know, Iraq is a country in the Middle East. The city of Mosul is located in northern Iraq. It's one of the oldest cities in the world. This is an artist's rendition of what Mosul looked like in ancient times. In 2003, a US-led United Nations coalition invaded Iraq in order to oust its president, Saddam Hussein. After Hussein's regime fell, Iraq was occupied by UN forces for the next 8 years. But then in 2011, the peacekeeping forces withdrew. And in that vacuum, a terrorist group calling themselves ISIS rose to power. And by 2014, ISIS controlled large areas of Iraq. ISIS had control of oil fields and refineries, lucrative trade routes, stockpiles of arms and ammunition, and vast wealth. ISIS took control of Mosul and became the wealthiest, most powerful, best equipped terrorist organization the world had ever seen. And the world was in fear.
It's too bad, yeah.
Yeah, there were public beheadings. I don't know if you remember that. And terrorist activities in the news constantly. But the world fought back and ISIS began losing territory and power. And in 2016, the Iraqi government launched a final offensive to take back Mosul. For the injured civilians in Mosul, the closest hospital was in the city of Erbil, over 2 hours away, if they could even get there. And the hospitals in Mosul were either closed or used only for ISIS soldiers. Here is a photo of what Mosul looked like before ISIS. And here's what Mosul looked like during the war. Wow. So with the blessing of the Iraqi government, Samaritan's Purse set up an emergency field hospital, or EFH. It was set up on the front lines to help those injured in war. Anyone who was injured, regardless of political affiliation, religious affiliation, whether they were ISIS or not, was welcome at the EFH. Injured ISIS and Iraqi soldiers were treated the same as civilians. Now, you might think this document would be the first sign that this wasn't going to be a typical medical mission. It's called a proof of life form. You fill it out with your personal answers. And if you're taken hostage, the organization can ask these questions to your captors to prove if you're actually alive. But you know, this form didn't bother me at all. In my pride, I told myself, I'm going to be so brave. If I get captured or worse, I'm just going to stand up to ISIS. I was busting with self-confidence.
I see.
But I was about to learn my fourth lesson. Too much self-confidence is not a good thing. I had no idea what I was getting into. And it started the moment I arrived in Iraq. You see, when new volunteers arrive, they go to an orientation in SP's office in the city of Erbil. At my orientation, I met a guy who was already working at the EFH. He started telling me what it was like working there. Patients coming in around the clock, injured by car bombs, gunshots, burns, I have never taken care of major burns. You know that, Junji.
Yeah.
Patients with chest injuries requiring major chest surgery, and you know that also, Junji. In our practice, we have chest surgeons who do that.
Right.
There are patients with open wounds and skin grafts, which again are not my area of expertise. And the orientation interview, which normally took 2 days, but mine was rushed into only 12 hours because the surgeon I was replacing was leaving that same day. Wait a minute, I thought, I'm going to be the only general surgeon at the EFH. So, after 3 days of traveling from Hawaii and 18 hours after arriving in Iraq, I get whisked to the EFH.
Mm-hmm.
And my first 30 minutes there go like this. I get a report about the patients from the surgeon who was departing. And here's what he said.
Wow.
You have 30 plus patients. 3 of them are the intensive care unit with complex burns over 35% of their bodies. One of the burn patients just had surgery for bleeding, and he is still bleeding.
Mm.
It's a baby with burns on his face, back, arms, and legs who just had a tracheostomy. That's a tube in his windpipe for breathing. And he is developing an overwhelming infection.
Mm.
The other is the baby's mom who just had extensive burns and will need complex surgery and skin grafts to fix it. These patients were victims of a suicide car bomber just 3 days ago. And then we go to the rest of the hospital, and I see more patients with open wounds, open fractures, festering amputations, necrotic shrapnel and gunshot injuries whose wound care and skin grafts I will be responsible for. And while we're seeing these patients, a 10-year-old comes into the emergency room with a bomb blast injury to his abdomen. And then another man with a gunshot wound comes into the ER a few minutes later.
Oh.
I might have looked calm on the outside, but on the inside, I was freaking out. I was overwhelmed. I was thinking, what was I thinking coming here? I'm a general surgeon. You know that. I don't do this type of surgery or take care of these type of patients.
I'm surprised you did, this because, in Hawaii, we don't do these things much anymore, but,
No.
mm,
And you know, I'm definitely not a specialized trauma and burn surgeon who can take care of complex battlefield injuries.
no.
And I haven't seen this stuff since my residency training over 30 years ago. Why didn't you or someone stop me from making this crazy decision to come here, I thought.
Stu.
I was supposed to be the only general surgeon at the EFH for the next month, but I thought I would never last a month. And I was going to be the first surgeon who quits before he starts, but I couldn't quit because there would have been no one else.
Yeah.
So late that night, after operating on those 2 patients I talked about, and despite only 12 hours of sleep in the last 3 days, I was up at 2 a.m. because I couldn't sleep, and my head was spinning. For the next month, this is what my daily routine went. 5 a.m., wake up, do laundry, because I only had 2 pairs of scrubs, so I had to do laundry every other day, and figure out how to eat breakfast. And then starting at 7, we had team meetings, patient rounds, wound checks, seeing the consults that came in overnight. And from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., we operated. And we operated every day, 7 days a week. And did I mention that the temperature in the OR was 116 degrees Fahrenheit? That's 44 degrees centigrade. And that's with the AC turned on full blast.
So there's no air condition, just the temperature.
There was air conditioning, but it's so hot in the tent.
Oh, I see. It doesn't work well.
Yeah. So you can imagine that these were the most sought after seats in the entire facility. And then at 6 p.m., you had dinner unless you missed it. And 7 p.m. was hospital rounds. 10 p.m. was ER consults and emergency surgery, and sometimes, thankfully, sleep. And that was my life, 7 days a week for the next month. And everybody there worked that same schedule. Plus, there was the unrelenting heat of Iraq in July and doing work that was way out of my comfort zone. Plus, and if I thought about the end of the day, I wouldn't even start. And if I thought about the end of the month, I thought I would quit. But here's what I learned. It is amazing how close you can draw to a group of people when you are all in a difficult situation, all working together with a single purpose. My co-workers came from many other countries, including Canada, Australia, New Zealand, England, Germany, as well as US and Iraq. I'm not sure if there were any others from Japan, but there weren't any when I was there.
Mm.
But in these photos, you can see I've covered the faces of my Iraqi coworkers, but the rest were from other countries.
Yeah.
And we all became a group of people where human imperfections and weaknesses were not only overlooked, but were covered by the strengths of others. And people cheered each other on. People forgave each other, and no one had to go it alone. So here's my fifth lesson.
Mm.
Depend on your team and be a really good team member yourself.
Mm.
You just can't do this work alone. You
Right.
can't do this work alone, right? No matter how good you are. And here's a corollary. You might be thinking that your teachers or your mentors or people you admire are always confident, always sure of themselves, always comfortable, even when they're under stress. But I want you to know that we all get stressed out sometimes. The demands and stress of work and life and school can sometimes overwhelm anyone. We all go through it at points in our life. And when that happens to you, and it will happen, you're not alone. You can reach out. It's okay to ask for help.
Right.
I have so many amazing stories of things that happened while working at the EFH in Iraq. How an ISIS soldier who I was caring for decided to renounce his former life of revenge and hate. How the father of an Iraqi patient showed me that love has no country of origin or political agenda as he kissed me on the cheeks over and over because he was so overwhelmed with gratitude.
Mm.
How I became an actual trauma surgeon, fixing bullet holes in intestines and shattered kidneys in the middle of the night. And how a bomb shelter,
Mm.
prayers written on the inside of its walls, felt like the safest place in the world, even in the middle of a war zone. Or how an Iraqi scrub nurse stayed up late the night before I left to make me a special souvenir.
Wow.
Now I hand-painted rock from Iraq.
See.
precious, precious souvenir.
Yeah, that's a very valuable souvenir, I think.
Yeah. Now, since Iraq, I've been able to go on other missions with SP DART, working in their emergency field hospitals. Let me give you a little information about the emergency field hospitals themselves. An EFH is basically a tent hospital that can be transported and built almost anywhere. Loads of boxes are unpacked to build an ER, an OR, an ICU, patient wards, pharmacies, sleeping quarters, and bathrooms. Engineers and construction crews build water filtration systems, electrical systems, and a team can be deployed anywhere around the world within a few days of a disaster and start seeing patients within 5 days of arriving on site. And there we can do major orthopedic, general, and even vascular surgeries. Here is a short video to show you a little more about an
Samaritan's Purse Field Hospital is open in Lakai, Haiti. We are receiving patients and performing surgeries. This fills a really critical need as much of the healthcare infrastructure has been damaged in the earthquake. And this is the first time a lot of people, especially from the more rural areas, have been able to access healthcare.
As soon as the earthquake hit, Samaritan's Purse began mobilizing resources. And it's in that first few days where you can really reduce suffering and save lives, which is why it's so important to be able to load up, get the facility on an airplane, and be able to open up here as quickly as possible as we have in Lakai. Haiti's a challenging place, and the people here have gone through so much, and now another earthquake has struck. They really need all of the support that's come in, and the prayers that are coming from around the world is huge at a moment like this, where people are broken from the earthquake and broken from years of challenges. Thank you for your support, for being able to facilitate getting all these supplies here so quickly that we could set up and be able to love our neighbors here. And please keep praying for the people of Haiti.
So in 2021, I was able to work with SP in Haiti to care for those in the magnitude 7.2 earthquake. And in order to get to the earthquake epicenter while dodging warlords and gang violence, I got to fly with the U.S. Coast Guard. And if you want to know real heroes, I would tell you to hang around with these men and women, because these are people who will, in the middle of the night, in the darkest of the hour, jump from a helicopter into a raging sea to save you if you are drowning. They're just amazing. In Haiti, we started operating at 7 p.m. at night till early the next morning because it was the best time to operate when the heat and humidity was a little less, so the sweat wouldn't drip off your face and contaminate the operation.
Oh, I see.
And because care for earthquake victims usually involve fractures, I got to assist and do orthopedic procedures.
Oh.
This is my first X-Fix. An X-Fix is a device that stabilizes a fracture that is infected with earthquake debris, and it's what orthopedic surgeons use a lot in earthquake situations. Working with earthquake injuries has given me a new admiration for the amazing skills of my orthopedic surgery colleagues, the surgeons that work on the bones and joints. They are such great surgeons. And it taught me my sixth lesson. There are so many people in this world who are really knowledgeable and skilled and who can teach you so much. I would tell you to try and learn as much as you can from everyone about everything. Also, with SP in 2022, I was able to go to Ukraine to help deliver over 200 tons of medical and surgical supplies to Ukrainian hospitals in the war zone. This is a photo during a Russian cruise missile attack that hit about a mile away from our location. It is scary when a Russian cruise missile strikes, even if it's a mile away. And the people in Ukraine are experiencing that every day. In addition, they're losing their homes, their livelihood, and their loved ones. And earlier this year, I was able to go to Turkey, working with the Turkish government to establish a comprehensive tent medical facility in the parking lot of a 1,000-bed hospital, because that 1,000-bed hospital had to be closed after the earthquake because it was so badly damaged. And in fact, when that earthquake hit, the hospital lost power, including its backup generators, and sadly, over 80 patients on ventilators suddenly died. Altogether in Turkey, there were over 100,000 people injured, and about 60,000 people were killed in the earthquake. To see so much suffering from the devastation of the earthquake in Haiti and Turkey and the wars in Mosul and Ukraine is almost unbearable. And I would ask you to please keep those people in your thoughts and prayers. So, my time with SP has been filled with experiences beyond what I could have ever imagined. So to conclude, I want to ask you all a question that occurred to me while I was in Iraq. You see, not all of Iraq is a war zone. The war was only in and around the city of Mosul. But 30 miles away from Mosul is the beautiful city of Erbil. Erbil is full of history, culture, art, including a UNESCO World Heritage Site. But as you leave the city of Erbil, you see this sign. It shows that you can choose to go back to Erbil.
I see.
And there you can find safety and comfort. And the people in Erbil are generally happy. There doesn't seem to be a lot of suffering, and no one seems to be in need. You can lead a pretty happy, comfortable life in Erbil. Or you can choose to head to Mosul. In Mosul, you will find pain and sadness, and your heart will break for the things that you see and experience. You will find great needs, and you will be taken out of your comfort zone trying to fill those needs. You might be stressed beyond what you think you can handle.
But over here, you can help the other people. That's, sometimes only surgeon and physician can do. And it's a difficult decision which I may go this side or this side. But I think you have chosen to go back to like a difficult situation. And I really appreciate your courage, I think.
Yeah, thank you, Junji. Because in Mosul, you're going to learn and see things that you never imagined.
Yeah.
But you'll learn more about life than you ever thought you could, and you'll learn more about yourself than you ever could in Erbil. So for you watching, this is my concluding question for you. Which road will you choose? So thank you very much for listening to my presentation. Thank you, Junji, for inviting me to speak.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is kind of a second time for me to listen to this, but today I kind of got more impressed, about what you have done, in a difficult area like Iraq, Tahiti, Ukraine, and Turkey, and I know you have been going to the mission to the Asian country, but these are the area relatively safe, right? Basically, you have many people, but now last few years you go all over this kind of dangerous area, and sometimes it may be life-threatening situation, and particularly you spend 1 month in Iraq. It's a very the courage. I think I probably cannot do it, of course, but I really admire your experience and willingness to help other people all over the world.
Thank you. And I admire the way you call to do other things, to teach and go to Japan. That's what you do is so impressive as well. So everybody has their place in this world.
Okay, thank you. Any other last words to the young Japanese people?
No, I'm so thankful that you gave me a chance to speak to them. I hope they enjoyed the presentation.
Yeah.
And I so enjoy working with you as a partner. Thank you.
Good. And your lessons, 6 lessons you presented is really applicable for everybody, not necessarily who is going to be a physician or a healthcare provider, but any other, career and profession. That lessons are very helpful. So this your presentation was a very big meaning for them. Thank you very much. And we'll see you tomorrow on Monday again and work together.
That's our
Yeah.
Hawaii greeting.
Thank you.